For decades, Iran has been carrying out targeted attacks against critics of the regime living abroad. Iranian journalists and dissidents around the world have increasingly found themselves caught in the crosshairs.
هر کدومتون که یک روز هم کار رسانه‌ای علیه این نظام کرده باشین همتون خواهین خورد.
I've been following plots carried out by criminal proxies around the world. One name keeps coming up again and again. An organized crime boss, Naji Sharifi Zindashti.
تهمت مردم حالا من بخیاد کن تجارت دیدکن یعنی ترور نکن جنبه سیاسی نکن.
This is the story of a chilling connection between Iranian security forces and international criminal networks. In 2017, Saeed Karimian was assassinated on the streets of Istanbul. He ran a series of TV channels, Gem TV, that aired Western movies and series to Iran. In the eyes of Islamic regime, the programs were against Islamic values.
Well, our correspondent Jiyar joins us now from Istanbul.
Some other people on social media, they say there was a lot of murky businesses. It might be actually some sort of business feud or gangs-related issue. But what we know definitely, Iranian regime wasn't happy with the kind of program he was showing.
Just 2 years later, Masoud Molavi Verdanjani, a former member of Iranian Revolutionary Guards Corps who had defected, was assassinated in Istanbul. He had been publishing details of corruption at the highest level in Iranian leadership on his Telegram account called Black Box. An Iranian diplomat on his way to Tehran was arrested in Istanbul airport, but was later released after he claimed diplomatic immunity. I got hold of this copy of the Turkish court document and the investigation around the assassination of Saeed Karimian in Istanbul. There is a suspect name here, Naji Sharifi Zindashti. I've heard that name before, but in connection with drug trafficking, not political assassination. Timur Soykan is one of Turkey's leading investigative journalists and has exposed crime and corruption at the highest levels.
Karimian'ın öldürüldüğü gün ise aracının önü beyaz bir otomobil tarafından kesildi ve çarşaf giymiş 2 kişi tarafından uzun namlulu silahlarla ateş açıldı. O sırada yine güvenlik kameraları incelendiğinde Karimian'ın öldürülmesinden hemen önce oradan Zindaşti'nin şoförünün bulunduğu aracın geçtiği tespit edildi. Yani buradan da savcılar şu sonuca vardılar. Hem cinayetin keşif çalışmalarını yaptı Zindaşti'nin şoförü hem de cinayet anında hedefi tetikçilere gösterdi. Hatta daha sonra Karimian öldükten sonra bu şoförün Zindaşti'nin yanına gittiği, Zindaşti'nin kullandığı bir telefonla irtibat kurduğu tespit edildi. Bunun üzerine Zindaşti Karimian cinayetinde bir numaralı sanık oldu.
A year later, Zindashti was arrested in connection with the killing. He was held for 6 months, but was then released. In October 2020, another dissident was targeted. Habib Chab was lured from Sweden to Turkey and abducted. The Iranian regime accused Chab of plotting attacks against Iranian security forces. He was smuggled back to Iran, where a confession was extracted. After a show trial, he was convicted and executed. Zindashti's nephew was arrested in Turkey in connection with the kidnapping and served time in prison. So, who is Naji Zindashti? Zindashti was known to be a notorious drug trafficker in Turkey. But is there more to him?
Zendaşti çok güçlü bir adam, güçlü bir ilişkileri var istihbaratçılarla, devletle.
Turkey is one of the meeting points of drug routes from the east and criminal gangs supplying drugs to Europe in the west. Zindashti grew up in the border area of Iran that has seen drugs trafficked for decades. Someone who knows his history and whose identity we are concealing for his own safety says drug running is what brought him to the attention of the authorities while he was still a young man in Iran in 1996. He is portrayed here by an actor.
Naji was arrested for drug smuggling and sentenced to death. But rumors later surfaced that he killed a prison guard and had escaped from Tehran prison. Now we finally understand the true reason behind his release. If someone is sentenced to death and kills a prison guard and escapes, there is no doubt that he will be executed by Iranian Islamic laws. So, the only plausible way for him to return and live freely would be if he'd been working for Iran's intelligence services.
Vardanjani cinayetinde ise tetikçinin yine bu şoförün kardeşi olan ve Zindashti'nin çalışanı gözüken, bahçıvan olarak onun kadrolu çalışanı görünen kişi olduğu, yani onun adamı olduğu tespit edildi. Çünkü Zindashti 2 cinayetle suçlanıyordu. Örneğin Kerimiyan ve Vardanjani, ama bununla sınırlı değildi.
Zindashti, who the US authorities say is an asset of the Iranian Ministry of Intelligence, is the prime suspect in each of the plots against the Iranian dissidents in Turkey. In 2017, for the murder of Saeed Karimian. In 2019, for the murder of Masoud Molavi Verdanjani. In 2020, the abduction of Habib Chab. Turkey has charged Iranian diplomats and people linked to Zindashti for their roles in the plots.
Orada da Zendaşti reddediyor bu iddiaları. İran gizli servisiyle ilişkisi olduğuna yönelik iddiaları reddediyor ama rejim muhaliflerinin yok edilmesinde ya da ortadan kaldırılmasında, kaçırılmasında, İran'ın hoşlanmadığı insanların yok edilmesinde hep bir şekilde Zendaşti ve adamlarının izi gözüküyor. Ve bu da açıklanmaya muhtaç bir durum. Bu ilk defa değil aslında ama hep organize suçla istihbarat örgütleri arasında bir bağ vardır.
Yani Zindashti sadece Kerimiyan, Vardanjani ve Habib Şahap'ın uyuşturucu kaçakçılığı, başka farklı cinayetler vardı dosyanın içinde. Ona rağmen bu çok ağır suçlamalara ve büyük dosyaya rağmen 6 ay içerisinde serbest bırakılması çok büyük bir hukuki skandaldı. Bu da hatta hepimizi şoke etti.
A year later, Naji Zindashti was implicated in yet another plot, this time more than 5,000 miles away, just outside the US capital in Maryland.
The feds charged 1 Iranian and 2 Canadian nationals for plotting the murders of 2 Maryland residents, one of whom had defected from Iran, according to court documents.
We have seen that the IRGC and Quds Force are a part of Iran's efforts to undertake both lethal plots to kidnap and also to harass dissidents and other perceived opponents. I think there is a growing body of evidence, and some of this evidence is now public following the January indictment and the sanctions that we imposed on Zindashti and his co-conspirators about this plot. And I think what we've seen is You know, this is one example of the Iranian regime's efforts to use transnational plotting to coordinate with organized criminal groups in order to target its perceived opponents.
In December 2023, this document was filed in the District of Minnesota against Hells Angels members. What is interesting here, the prosecutor refers to the target as victim number 1 who had defected from Iran. It is very clear whoever this person was must have been a member of Iranian establishment. That's why they were so angry. They came after this person. This document also transcribes an online chat on how to kill victim number 1. And Zindashti has been communicating with this criminal group. He says it must be overkill. Eventually, they agree on $370,000 US. And Zindashti said, you have to make a show, make an example of him. We gotta erase his head from his torso.
We have seen evidence of this kind of coordination between Iranian government officials and criminal organizations, whether it's drug traffickers, organizations such as the Hells Angels. And I think some of this evidence is now public, as we've seen through the publication of the indictment against Zindashti and his network.
The UK Domestic Security Services, MI5, has reported 20 credible plots against Iranian nationals in the UK.
We're determined to protect those individuals. We're determined to protect free and fair broadcasting and journalism from the UK. And we are going after hard those individuals who either think they can project that from places like Iran, or they think that they can simply enter into a contract with organised or low-level criminals to do that dirty work for them.
In January 2024, the UK government sanctioned Zindashti, 2 members of his gang convicted in relation to plots in Turkey, 2 Iranian diplomats, and Unit 840 of the elite Quds Force of the Iranian Revolutionary Guards Corps.
The IRGC and Iranian intelligence turned a blind eye or permitted him to traffic drugs domestically and internationally. In exchange, he aids them to the targeted abductions and killings of Iranian dissidents abroad.
We put all the issues raised in this film to Iranian officials, but didn't receive a response. I managed to track down a rare interview that Zindashti had done with a journalist from Iran, who asked him about his involvement in the plots and attacks.
روژا یه اوبا تا ترور کردن 4000 منو شوفر من دشنا وی کنسروی اوقات کشتن پلیس پیشا که چون شوفر تا ور بیا هر شوله بلکه رد گیری و اگه یا مسعود ملویده چه مقام مدیده چنینه و چه دادگاهی چنینه یعنی تنه مدیده ده هیا پلیس دا دادگاه دا آلی مسعود ملوی دا هلا چتش تهمت مدم حالا من بخیاد کن چه شرطا نگه نهاده امنیتی ایرانی نگه میتا ترتاوانه مرگه چه نبونه تکیلی چه نبونه اما گه یه عشایری گه یه منطقه گه پایگاه منطقه همون یک دناس کنده این چینچی یارمتی شبیده کن یعنی
Over the last 2 years, intelligence services, both in the US and abroad, say lethal operations against critics of the regime have accelerated. Meanwhile, the alleged kingpin behind many of these plots, Naji Zindashti, remains a wanted man.